Hi students, today let's discuss regarding an overview of infectious disease. Okay, so in this session we will be dealing regarding certain terms that will be associated with infectious process. Okay, so first of all the infectious disease process, the definition. It is defined as the interaction between the pathogenic microorganism and the environment and the host. That is the infectious disease process. It is a combination or it is an association between not only the pathogenic organism with the environment as well as with the host also. Okay, so what is infection? It is an invasion of the body by pathogens or microorganisms capable of producing disease and the result in signs and symptoms that develop in response to the invasion. What do you mean by an infection? Infection means it is an invasion by microorganisms. Either it can be a microorganism or by another form of pathogens into a person's body. These microorganisms will be having the capability to produce the diseases. Okay, so that's why the after the invasion of these microorganisms into one's body, it will create certain signs and symptoms so that it may lead to a disease process. Okay, that is a definition of infection. Then sources of infection. In our environment, we can see a different ranges of sources from which we get the infection. Okay, the sources means it is an origin of infectious microorganisms from where these microorganisms can come out. That is the sources of infection. It is also known as a reservoir. Okay, reservoir, the word meaning of reservoir is it is a place where an agent can survive for a long period of time. Okay, so it can reserve or it can store that kind of microorganisms. Okay, so reservoir is it is another term for source of infection. Okay, mainly the sources include infected humans or animals and contaminated articles and equipment. So sources can be of two types: living as well as non-living. Living means infected humans, and animals can be included in the group of living sources of infection, or the contaminated articles and equipment can be included in non-living group of or source of infection. Okay, then the causes of infection, it is divided into four groups: bacteria, virus, fungi and protozoa. Okay, so bacteria means what? It is we have seen different forms of bacteria which are responsible for developing the infection like streptococcus pneumoniae or staphylococcus. These are some of the examples of bacteria. Virus means adenovirus. Adenovirus. Okay. Bacteria means streptococci or staphylococci. Then fungus. Fungal infections are also caused by the fungi group. Then protozoal infections. Protozoa means they are single cell or animal like organisms, which is also considered as the organisms which are responsible for developing the infection. Then the spread of infection, how these infections can be spreaded from one person to another. Okay, it may include two phases, that is pre-pathogenesis phase and pathogenesis phase. Pre-pathogenesis phase means agent, host, and environment are the causative factors of disease. So these three factors can be collectively called as what epidemiological triad. If you draw a triangle, these 3 points will be first is agent, host, or environment. Okay. So if there is an association occur between either two or three factors of this triad, it can be caused an infection. Okay, for example, if a microorganisms enter into a person's body from the environment through any droplet transmissions or not, so there will be a formation or there will be a higher chance for getting a respiratory infection. It's an example. Okay, so this is called as epidemiological triad. Presence of these factors does not cause the disease. Interactions between these three factors. So it may not be necessary to occur an infection from the environment alone. Only when the infections will occur. If the microorganisms can enter into the person's body through any contaminated route or either through sneezing or coughing. So either through this processes, sometimes these microorganisms can be entered into a susceptible host bodies. Through that, they may get the infection. Okay. Then, pathogenesis phase means it is a disease agent like bacteria, virus, fungi, and protozoa enter into a susceptible human host. Disease agent multiplies and induces tissue and physiological changes. The disease progresses through a period of incubation and produce clinical manifestations. Okay, so disease agent can be either a bacteria or a virus or a fungi or a protozoa. So any one of these microorganisms can enter into a person's body. Only these microorganisms are capable to produce the infections when the immunity power of the host is limited. Okay, so after the invasion of these microorganisms entered into a person's body, it will multiply and induces tissue and physiological changes like inflammatory changes and reactions through the release of certain toxins into a person's body. Through that, they may develop infections. Okay, next is the chain of infection. How an infection will happen? It will happen in a circular form. So there will be a cyclic pattern of certain factors which are responsible for developing an infection. We can see that. First is infectious agent. Example is bacteria or virus. Then reservoir. Reservoir means the place where these microorganisms can stay. Okay, so these microorganisms can be present in this reservoir. Sometimes it may be an animal, maybe a human being, or whatever it is. And portal of exit means after entering or after release of these microorganisms from the reservoir through any portal of exit. Through the mode of transmission, it will enter into a susceptible host to the bottle of entry, so that this cyclic process will be continuing. We can discuss each term in detail. So infectious agent means it is a microbial organism with the ability to cause disease. Example is virus or bacteria or fungi, whatever it is. We have already seen this. Okay. The reservoir means a place within which microorganisms can thrive and reproduce. So reservoir means a place, comfortable place for a particular microorganism, which is responsible for infection. Okay. Then portal of exit means a place of exit providing a way for microorganisms to leave the reservoir. Through this portal of exit, these microorganisms can be exit from this reservoir site. Okay, example is nose, mouth, whatever it is. So suppose if the reservoir is a human being, this portal of exit can be considered as nose or mouth, whatever it is. Okay. Then mode of transmission, method of transfer by which the organism moves or is carried from one place to another. How these infectious organisms can be traveled from one place to another, or the route of transmission is called as, or otherwise called as mode of transmission. Okay, is either through direct transmission or indirect transmission or airborne or whatever it is. Okay, so in the direct transmission, these infectious agents can be transmitted either through direct contact. If you are contacting with an infected person, automatically that infections will be spread from that person to a susceptible host. Okay, then droplet infection through the droplet molecules or particles, these microorganisms can be traveled. Then contact with soil or transplanted placental transmission is otherwise considered as a direct transmission. Okay, then indirect transmission means it is a form of transmission, but there is no close contact between the susceptible host with this infected persons. Okay, but it can be occurred or it can be considered as a vehicle-borne or vector-borne transmission, in which there will be a carrier should be needed or should be present to travel this or to carry these microorganisms from an infected person to a susceptible host body. Okay, then vehicle borne, vector borne. Vector borne is again divided into mechanical or biological. Then airborne infections can be happen either through the droplet nuclei or dust particles, or formite bonds, then unclean hands and fingers. These are some of the modes of transmission, how these infections can be transmitted from one person to another. Then portal of entry means it is an opening, allow the microorganisms to enter the host. Once these microorganisms released from a reservoir, it can enter into a susceptible host through the portal of entry. Same as that of portal of exit, sometimes nose or mouth can act as a portal of entry too. Okay, then susceptible host means a person who cannot resist a microorganism invading the body, multiplying or resulting in infection. In susceptible host means a particular person who cannot stop the invasion of these microorganisms due to many reasons. Maybe due to decreased immunity power or decreased nutritional status or due to other comorbidities or patient with steroid therapy. Okay, so this is some of the examples or factors which are responsible to decrease the immunity power of your patient so that they will get higher risk for getting this kind of infection. Okay, then modes of transmission, it is a process that bridges the gap between the portal of exit of the biological agent from the source and the portal of entry of the susceptible new host. Okay, we have already seen what exactly it is. Okay, there are mainly 5 modes: contact, transmission, droplet transmission, airborne, vehicle, and vector. Okay, in the previous slide we had seen this uh, vehicle and vector under indirect transmission. Contact transmission means it involves the direct physical transfer of an agent from an infected person to a host to direct contact. It's very, very important. Okay, with a contaminated object or close contact with the contaminated secretion. Suppose if the infected person if the infected person is trying to contact with a susceptible host, these contaminated materials can be transferred from an infected person to a susceptible host body. So through the direct contact, either by touching the person's body or by kissing, or these are some of the modes or methods through which these microorganisms can be traveled. Then droplet transmission means it involves the transfer of the infective microbes to the mucous membrane of the nose or mouth or the conjunctiva of the eyes of a susceptible individual or host through sneezing, coughing, and or talking by an infected person. In this kind of transmission, droplets can be act as a vehicle for transmitting this kind of microorganisms. Okay, so these droplet molecules can be exposed or released into the environment either through the coughing, sneezing, or talking by an infected person. Okay, then airborne transmission means what? It occurs when a susceptible host contacts droplet nuclei or dust particles that are suspended in the air. ഒരു മൈക്രോ ഓർഗാനിസംസ് തന്നെ പല രീതിയിൽ ഇൻഫെക്റ്റഡ് പേഴ്സൺസ് അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ഇൻഫെക്റ്റഡ് പേഴ്സണിൽ നിന്നും പല രീതിയിൽ സസെപ്റ്റബിൾ പേഴ്സണിലേക്ക് പോകാറുണ്ട്. ലൈക്ക് ഇപ്പോൾ ഡയറക്റ്റ് കോണ്ടാക്റ്റിലായിക്കോട്ടെ അല്ലെങ്കിൽ എയർബോണിലായിക്കോട്ടെ, ചിലപ്പം ഒരേ ഓർഗാനിസം തന്നെ പല രീതിയിലുള്ള മോഡ് ഓഫ് ട്രാൻസ്മിഷൻസും വരാറുണ്ട്. ഓക്കെ, ദെൻ വെക്റ്റർ ട്രാൻസ്മിഷൻ മീൻസ് ഇപ്പം vector transmission means it occurs when an agent is transferred to a susceptible host by animate means such as fleas, mosquitoes, etc. Okay, so here some kind of organisms or some kind of objects that can be considered as a vectors for transmitting or transferring this kind of infectious organisms. Okay, so vector route എന്ന് പറയുന്നത് ഒരു mediator ആണ്. So through this mediator, these infectious organisms can be traveled. Okay, ആ മീഡിയേറ്റേഴ്സ് ആണ് ചിലപ്പോൾ ഫ്ലീസ് ആവാം അല്ലെങ്കിൽ മോസ്കിറ്റോസ് ആവാം. അതാണ് നമ്മൾ വെക്ടർ ബോൺ ഡിസീസ് എന്ന് പറയുന്നത്. ചിക്കൻ ഗുനിയ ഓർ ഡെങ്കു ഫീവർ, ഇറ്റ് ഇസ് വൺ ഓഫ് ദി or it is considered as the mosquito or vector-borne diseases. Okay, so in that case also mosquito is acting as a part of vector. Vehicle transmission means it occurs when an agent is transferred to a susceptible host by contaminated inanimate objects such as water, food, milk or blood. Okay, അപ്പോൾ inanimate എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞാൽ ജീവനില്ലാത്ത വസ്തുക്കളിലൂടെയും ഇൻഫെക്ഷസ് മെറ്റീരിയൽസ് ട്രാൻസ്ഫർ ചെയ്യാം. Okay, then course of infection. There will be mainly 5 courses of infection. First is incubation period. It is period between entrance of pathogen into body and appearance of first symptoms. It is very, very important. Incubation എന്ന് പറയുന്നത് അവിടെ പേഷ്യന്റിന് സിവിയർ ഇൽനെസ് വരുന്ന സമയമല്ല. Suppose in this period between the entrance of pathogen, ഒരു ഓർഗാനിസം മൈക്രോ ഓർഗാനിസം നമ്മുടെ ബോഡിയിൽ എൻട്രി ചെയ്ത ഉടനെ നമ്മുടെ ബോഡിയിൽ സൈൻസ് ആൻഡ് സിംപ്റ്റംസ് കാണിക്കില്ല. സോ ദർ വിൽ ബി എ പർട്ടിക്കുലർ പീരിയഡ് ഓഫ് ടൈം ദാറ്റ് ഈസ് കോൾഡ് as incubation period. So when it is completed, when the patient exhibits first symptom. Okay, that is the end stage of incubation period. Okay, then prodromal stage means it is an interval from the onset of non-specific signs or symptoms to more specific symptoms. In the beginning of an infection, it is not mandatory to develop specific symptoms according to that type of infection. In general, sometimes patient may exhibit general kind of or non-specific signs and symptoms. In the later stage also, patient may show some kind of symptoms. Okay, so this is called as prodromal stage. Then illness stage. It is an interval when the patient manifests signs and symptoms specific to the type of infection. So illness stage means the patient is actually having severe form of infection. In that stage, patient will show only the specific patterns of symptoms according to the infection. Okay. Convalescent stage means interval when acute symptoms of an infection disappear. Length of recovery depends on severity of infection and the client's general state of health. Recovery stage in which sometimes patient may be having a reduction or the severity of symptoms. Okay, അല്ലെങ്കിൽ disappear in the stage. Then how we can control this kind of infections? So it is not only a particular technique or treatment, but it can be managed with a different factor based approach. That's why it is called as multifactorial. Okay, so first of all we have to manage or control the reservoir, because from the reservoir these microorganisms can be exit. Okay, so to control the reservoir we can find early diagnosis. At the initial stage of the disease itself we have to treat, or we have to identify the disease at the early stage itself. It will help to prevent the spread of infection from one person to another. Example, ഇപ്പോൾ നമ്മൾ COVID-19 നവഡേയ്സ് വളരെ പാൻഡമിക് ആവുന്ന ഒരു കണ്ടീഷനാണ് COVID-19. സോ നമ്മൾ അവിടെ ആ ഒരു പാറ്റേൺ ചിന്തിച്ച് നമുക്ക് വളരെ കോറിലേറ്റ് ചെയ്യാൻ സാധിക്കും. സോ അവിടെ റിസർവർ ആയിട്ട് ആക്ട് ചെയ്യുന്നത് ചിലപ്പോൾ ഹ്യൂമൻ ബീങ്സ് ആണ് അല്ലെ. അപ്പം ഇൻഫെക്റ്റഡ് ആയിട്ട് കാണുന്ന ആൾക്കാരെ തന്നെ അറ്റ് ദി ബിഗിനിങ് സ്റ്റേജ് നമ്മൾ ഏർലി ഡയഗ്നോസ് ചെയ്യുവാണ്. ത്രൂ ഡയഗ്നോസ്റ്റിക് കിറ്റ് വഴി നമ്മൾ ഐഡന്റിഫൈ ചെയ്യുവാണ്. Okay, so that is early diagnosis. It will help to prevent the spread of this disease to another. Okay, the notification. Notification means if one kind of infection occur in a particular community, it can be communicated to the responsible or authoritative persons. For example, in a community, if someone is infected with a pulmonary tuberculosis, it should be reported to the higher level, or the health centers should get the adequate information regarding this incident, so that they can, or the ASHA workers or the community health nurse can prevent the spread of infection from one person to another through the adequate kind of anti-tubercular treatment. Okay, so that is notification. Then isolation. Suppose if a person is infected with a pulmonary tuberculosis, it can be transmitted through the droplet nuclei. So we should isolate that particular person. Or else, if the person is infected with a kind of chicken pox, it can be transmitted through direct contact. So that you should isolate that particular person. Okay, then treatment. At the initial stage itself, they have to get the initial treatment so it can prevent spread of or complications. Then quarantine. Nowadays, it's very, very familiar term for everyone, isn't it? So quarantine means what? It is a limitation of freedom of movement of such well persons or domestic animals exposed to communicable disease for a period of time not longer than ലാർജസ്റ്റ് യൂഷ്വൽ ഇൻക്യുബേഷൻ പീരിയഡ് ഓഫ് ഡിസീസ്. നമ്മൾ എപ്പോഴും കേൾക്കുന്ന ഒരു വളരെ ഫെമിലർ ആയിട്ട് കൊച്ചുകുട്ടികൾക്ക് അടക്കം പരിചയമുള്ള ഒരു ടേമാണ് ക്വാറന്റൈൻ എന്ന് പറയുന്നത് അല്ലെ. സോ ക്വാറന്റൈൻ മീൻസ് വാട്ട്? അത് എക്സ്പോസ്ഡ് ആയിട്ടുള്ള എക്സ്പോസ്ഡ് ആയിട്ടുള്ള ആൾക്കാരെ കൂടുതൽ സ്പ്രെഡ് പ്രിവെന്റ് ചെയ്യാനായിട്ട് ഒരു പർട്ടിക്കുലർ പീരീഡ് ഓഫ് ടൈമിലേക്ക് നമ്മൾ അവരുടെ മൂവ്മെന്റ്സ് നമ്മൾ റെസ്ട്രിക്ട് ചെയ്യുന്നു. എപ്പോഴും ഹോം ക്വാറന്റൈൻ ആണ് ഇപ്പോൾ COVID-19 നമ്മൾ ചെയ്യുന്നത്. സോ ഇപ്പം ഗൾഫിൽ നിന്ന് വരുന്ന ആൾക്കാർ അല്ലെങ്കിൽ മഹാരാഷ്ട്ര പോലുള്ള ഹയർ ഇൻസിഡൻസ് കേസിൽ നിന്ന് വരുന്ന ആൾക്കാർ നമ്മൾ 2 weeks ക്വാറന്റൈനിൽ വെക്കുന്നത്. ദേ ആർ അണ്ടർ ദി ഹോം ക്വാറന്റൈൻ. ഇറ്റ് ഈസ് നോട്ട് ഓൺലി ടു പ്രിവെന്റ് the risk, not only to prevent the risk, but to protect that person from infection also. Okay, then interruption of transmission. So disease control ചെയ്താൽ മാത്രം പോലെ ട്രാൻസ്മിഷനും ഇന്ററപ്റ്റ് ചെയ്യണം. So you can break the chain of transmission by changing some components of man's environment. So ഈ ഒരു ടേമും ഈ ഒരു കാലഘട്ടത്തിലും വളരെ ഫെമിലർ. ബ്രേക്ക് ദ ചെയിൻ. ഓക്കെ, ചാലഞ്ച്, ബ്രേക്ക് ദ ചെയിൻ ചാലഞ്ച് എന്നൊക്കെ പറയുന്നത് വളരെ ഫെമിലർ ഉള്ള ടേമാണ്. അപ്പം നമ്മൾ ഡിസ്കസ് ചെയ്ത് പറഞ്ഞു ചെയിൻ ഓഫ് ഇൻഫെക്ഷൻ അല്ലെ. ചെയിൻ ഓഫ് ഇൻഫെക്ഷൻ എന്ന് പറയുമ്പോൾ അതിനകത്ത് 6 ഫാക്ടേഴ്സ് ഉണ്ട്. അതിലെല്ലാം കൂടെ കണക്ട് ചെയ്ത് വരണമെങ്കിൽ മാത്രമേ ഇൻഫെക്ഷൻ ഉണ്ടാവുള്ളൂ. സോ അതിലേതെങ്കിലും ഒരു ചെയിൻ നമ്മൾ ബ്രേക്ക് ചെയ്താൽ ഓട്ടോമാറ്റിക്കലി ദാറ്റ് ഇൻഫെക്ഷൻസ് ക്യാൻ ബി സ്റ്റോപ്ഡ് അറ്റ് ദാറ്റ് സ്റ്റേജ് ഇറ്റ്സെൽഫ്. ഓക്കെ, ഫോർ എക്സാമ്പിൾ COVID-19 തന്നെ എടുക്കാം. സോ ദാറ്റ് ഈസ് വെരി ഫെമിലിയർ ഫോർ യു. ഓക്കെ, COVID-19 എങ്ങനെയാണ് നമ്മുടെ ബോഡിയിലേക്ക് എത്തുന്നത്? സോ അതിനെ പ്രിവെന്റ് ചെയ്യാൻ നമ്മൾ ആദ്യം ചെയ്തത് ഹാൻഡ് വാഷിംഗ് ആയിരുന്നു, ഹാൻഡ് ഹൈജീൻ ആയിരുന്നു. സോ ഇറ്റ് ക്യാൻ ബി കൺസിഡർഡ് ആസ് ആൻ ഇന്ററപ്ഷൻ ഓഫ് ട്രാൻസ്മിഷൻ ത്രൂ ഹാൻഡ് ഹൈജീൻ. സസെപ്റ്റബിൾ ഹോസ്റ്റ് അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ഇപ്പം ഇൻഫെക്ഷൻ വരാൻ ചാൻസ് ഉള്ള ആൾക്കാർ, അതായത് ഇപ്പം അതും ഞാൻ COVID-19 എക്സാമ്പിൾ എടുക്കുന്നു. ബിക്കോസ് above 60 years of age or children less than 10 years of age, they are at higher risk for getting infection. So we should protect that kind of risk group people. Okay, so in majority of communicable diseases, it can be protected by providing active immunization. Okay, then infection control measures include hand washing. Example, in case of severe COVID-19 cases, it can be managed with a proper practice of hand washing. So in the previous years, you had discussed or you had learned regarding this hand washing in detail. So I don't want to discuss all these topics again. Okay, then sterilization. What is sterilization? So it is any process that effectively kills or eliminates transmissible agents from a surface or equipment. Okay, so it is a kind of removing a particular microorganisms from a stage or from a surface. So sterilization is very, very important aspect when you're conducting or when you're attending an operation procedure. Okay, then isolation means we are trying to isolate or separate an infected person from others to prevent the spread of infection. So isolation can be of different kinds, like strict isolations can be there, then contact isolation, then respiratory isolation, then blood and body fluids isolation. Okay, so these are some of the types of isolation you have already seen or discussed regarding this kind of isolation procedures in your previous class. Okay, then immunization. It will help to improve the immunity status of a person so that it will reduce the risk of getting infection. Okay, so these are the main infection control measures. Okay, in this lesson or in this session, we had seen regarding what is infection and what are the stages of infection or what are the signs of infectious diseases what are the periods or course of infection, like incubation period, then stages like prodromal stage or convalescent stage. And we had seen regarding the microorganisms or causative organisms responsible for getting infection like bacteria, fungi, virus, protozoa, etc. Okay, and how we can prevent this kind of infection, like hand washing techniques of sterilization, isolation, or immunization procedure. Okay, I hope you got an idea regarding this topic well, and if you have any doubt, you can contact me. Okay, thank you.